Wow, you all have packed in here. I love this. So good to see all of you. Thank you all for coming out. We do our best to promote our culture within the realm of news. So thanks to all of you who watch Live 5. We truly appreciate it. This October will make year 24 for me at Live 5 News. So I appreciate the support. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and delve into it. Okay, so this question is going to be for both of you. Share with the audience why you embarked on the 8 Cities, 8 Days Black Bookstore Tour. Why is this so significant, especially at this time? Victoria.
Yeah, so I guess I said a little bit about it already, but first of all, thank you all for coming out. It's a little warm down here. I'm from Washington, D.C. So when you see me with this, don't mind me. I'm just a woman of a fantastic age. And so I'm just kind of being fantastic at different moments because y'all got some heat down here. But I just said it, I've had the privilege. I've been writing now for 28 years. And it was the Black bookstores that put me on the map. It was the Black bookstores when I wrote my first novel that not only did they buy the books, but they hand sold the books. They saw me. They knew who I was. And the next book and the next book. And they're the ones that invited me to the stores. The other stores weren't inviting us until the Black bookstores did. And so I've had a chance to see on the other side where we're there because we have to be, they have to have us. But here, we're here because they want us. And the Black bookstores have done so much for us. This is the least we can do.
All right, let's delve into the questions. So I want to start again. This one's one for both of you. Help us to understand the term historical fiction. How much of your work is based on factual information? How much of it was embellished with your imagination or your literary liberties?
So funny, because historical and fiction, that's kind of a dichotomy, right? Mm-hmm. You have the truth and the lie, and you're mixing it together. But what we both try to do is anchor every single scene that we write, anchor it in history. So every single scene in Harlem Rhapsody is based on something I know. It's based on something that happened. I just don't know what they said. I don't know what they wore. I don't know what they ate. But even that, I extrapolate from my research. So there's a good part. I don't make up characters. The only characters that are made up are like the waiter and, the taxi cab driver and things like that. But people who have to delve into the book after they started reading, they're looking up people and they're like, Victoria, this is too much. They're all real. They're all real.
So most of the characters in The Queen of Sugar Hill are real, based in foundation. Like she said, we do the facts, and then the fiction comes in filling in the blanks. However, I did take creative liberties in one part of Hattie McDaniel's life. When I was doing my research, you know how you kind of discover that your grandma used to get it on? Well, that's what I found out about Hattie McDaniel. Hattie loved love, and Hattie was a cougar before we knew what a cougar was. So as I'm researching, I'm like, I need a flow chart to keep up with all of Hattie's young lovers. I mean, it was so many, one after the other, because like I said, she loved love. And so I said, okay, the readers are just not going to be able to keep up with all of these young lovers. So I combined all of her young lovers into one. And that is a fictional character named Winston in the book. But everything he does is something one of her young lovers did.
I know y'all ready to start reading, right? Right? Yeah.
Y'all didn't know that about Mammy, did you?
Y'all cut this discussion short. Let's get to reading. Okay, Victoria, we're going to talk about you. You have now achieved writing 3 historical fiction novels, 2 of those with Marie Benedict. What was the process like for you writing Harlem Rhapsody without another author's input?
Well, I've written over 30 novels, and so most of my novels I've written alone. So it wasn't anything new for me, but she had taught me how to research. She had taught me how to write historical fiction. So it was a good process. I got to choose who I wanted to write rather than the two of us deciding on it together, what we would do. I got to put in everything I wanted to. But I like writing with her, and I like writing without her.
Awesome. Great experience. ReShonda, next question is for you. The Queen of Sugar Hill was your first foray into historical fiction. You have the forthcoming work with Love from Harlem that details the life of jazz prodigy, film star, and civil rights activist Hazel Scott. How does your background as a journalist and author shape the way you approach historical fiction?
That's a good question. She's been talking about me for the last year because I am, as a journalist, it is hard for me to alter someone's life. And so especially when I was writing with Love from Harlem on Hazel Scott's life, I kept putting things in that really didn't need to go in a novel, but I would say, okay, but it really happened because as a journalist, we're used to detailing the truth. And so that was a struggle for me, altering someone's life because I'm so used to the facts.
Tell us about your background as a journalist.
So I am a former television news anchor and reporter. I couldn't do 24 years, so props to you. I loved doing it, but I started writing while I was on the news, and my literary career really took off. And so I left the business in 2007 to write full time. And now I still remain a journalist. I'm a managing editor for a Black newspaper in Houston.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Next question is also for you. What were your initial impressions of Hattie McDaniel before writing the book? And in writing the novel, did your understanding of her change? How and why?
That is a great question. I did not like Hattie McDaniel. I did not like Mammy. My grandmother loved Gone with the Wind. And she would make us watch it, and I just remember just having such disdain for Mammy. And my grandmother said, "Why don't you like her?" And I said, "She's playing this maid." And my grandmother said, "But she's playing a maid, and I am a maid. So why are you looking at her with disdain? I've given my family a great life on this maid's salary. I have a good house on this maid's salary." And it was just at that point I'm thinking, why do we look at domestics who the foundation of so much of what we are is built upon? And then my grandmother also said, plus it was 1939. Who did you expect her to play, Scarlett O'Hara? And over the years, I just started shifting my thinking about Hattie McDaniel. And I took off my 21st century lens and looked at her from the time in which she was in. My grandmother loved it because Mammy ran that plantation. Right. And so she saw the power, whereas I was looking at the negativity of being a domestic. And over the years, I just developed a new love for Hattie McDaniel. And as I started researching and learning more, I'm like, why do we not know these things? So much of the things that I discovered.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. I love that insight. Victoria, Jessie Redmond Fawcett. Fawcett, is that correct? Fawcett. Was instrumental in the success of so many legendary authors, Langston Hughes, Countee Cullen. She is even credited with starting the Harlem Renaissance, but she herself is not famous for her literary achievements. Why do you think she was forgotten in history?
Yeah, that's so interesting, right? Because how many of you have read Harlem Rhapsody? Okay, so a few of you. Wasn't that amazing? Like, when you hear the words Harlem Renaissance, there should be only one face that comes to mind. It should be Jessie Redmond Fawcett, because every single person you know from the Harlem Renaissance, she discovered, every single one. But we don't know her because she was almost erased. And there's several reasons. It was 100 years ago, and so women did not have careers. And so when she left, W.E.B. Du Bois took all the credit for what she did. And then the second reason why she was erased is because she was in this little situationship with W.E.B. Du Bois. Yeah, it was a situationship that lasted lasted almost as long as you've been at the. I mean, it lasted a long time, over 20 years, and I think some of that had to do with the reason she was erased. When she left, he was not happy, and he took the credit for so much of it. And then the other reason she was erased is so many of us are. Because when you think about it, this is how I think about Jessie Redmond Fawcett. She lived 100 years ago. And if I had not written her story, or if anyone else hadn't written her story, another 100 years would have passed, and you would have never known her. And so a history that's untold is a history that's easily erased. And so that's why we have to tell these stories, because it's our fault now. If we discover them and we don't write about them, it's on us. So that's what I think the passage of time also becomes an issue unless we do something about it.
So following up on that same question, do you think Jessie would be getting this notoriety and attention now if it were not for her tumultuous personal involvement with Dubois? And how do you think readers will perceive her once they've learned of the gravity of the situationship, as you so eloquently called it?
So when I first found out about the situationship, I was like, shoot me now.
It's an affair. It's an affair.
When I first found out about it, I was like, just shoot me now, because I did not want that to override her achievements. And so I was very concerned about that. But then I realized a couple of things. I realized that the reason I had an issue with it was because we kind of look at people as heroes, as extraordinary, when they're not extraordinary. They're ordinary people who have accomplished extraordinary things. And once I began looking at her and looking at him, just like I look at all the rest of us, I could accept it. The big challenge came for me because I was able to accept that, and I started writing the book, and the big challenge came when I found out she was a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I was about 25% of the way through the book, and I saw that Delta had paid for her this big trip to Europe. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be able to say something about my sorority. And then they said she was a member, and I was like, oh, no. She can't be a member because she's having an affair. And she's not a member of Delta. My sorors are going to kill me because everybody knows Deltas are perfect. We don't do that kind of thing. Oh my, I'm not even kidding. You can ask ReShonda. That almost took me out. I called ReShonda. I was like, I'm going to have to get back the money.
We're not giving back no money. We're not giving nothing back.
I was really concerned about that because I thought my sorors were going to say, she can't be a Delta. But then it was the president, our very first national president, that invited her to be a member of Delta Sigma Theta. So I would say, if anybody comes to me, I'm going to tell them to take it up with her. But no one has had an issue. Everybody's very proud. And then your question is, does the affair that she had have something to do with the interest? It had nothing to do with my interest. I had no idea they had an affair, and that made my book writing more complicated. I wrote her because this woman, I stand on her shoulders. Whenever we say that, sometimes it's a cliche, but she wrote the very first novel about the Black middle class. The very first novel ever written about the Black middle class was written by her, and that's what I write. And that's what I've been writing for 28 years. So I stand on this woman's shoulders for real. And then she turned kids that she met, County Cullen, Langston Hughes, into literary legends that I admire. That's why I wrote about her.
Awesome. The first chapter of the book, when she meets him and she calls him Will, and then I realized who he was. I was like, oh, she called him Will. I was like, wow, wait a minute. I didn't know what was going on.
That should have been
here.
your first clue.
Yeah, I was like, well, wait a minute, okay.
Yeah, I know. Nobody calls him Will.
Yeah, I'm like, Will.
Well, except for,
Okay, ReShonda, the next question is for you. How did Hattie's determination to seek better roles impact for other Black actors and the broader landscape of Hollywood?
Yeah, that was one of the things that really was heartbreaking for me. So when Hattie McDaniel, first of all, when I was writing the scene where she won the Academy Award, now, for those that don't know, Hattie McDaniel was the first Black person to win an Academy Award for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. So she, not only was she the first person nominated, she was the first person ever to win, and she was the first person invited to the awards. And first Black person. So as I'm writing this and I see all of the research, that Hattie is in the very back of the room. So all of the Gone with the Wind cast, because they were nominated for a number of awards, were sitting up front. And they had Hattie in the very back of the room near the kitchen. And so I'm mad. I'm sitting, I'm typing, I'm mad. I'm like, they got you all the way back in the back of the room. And Hattie's like, but I'm in the room. And it was at that point that I realized she always looked at the glass half full. And she said, I make change by being in the room. And so that determination for me, it was really just a big part of why I was so attracted to her story, because she was determined in spite of. She had so much negativity thrown at her, both from white people who thought that she was too sassy and black people who hated Mammy. They hated the stereotypes of Mammy. And one of the most moving parts of her story was the 1944 NAACP convention. And I do have this scene in the book. They invited, Walter White was the president of the NAACP. They invited Hattie McDaniel to the national convention in Los Angeles. And there are almost 10,000 people at this convention. Hattie had a contentious relationship with them, so she's wondering why she's invited, but she went ahead and went. And he got on stage and said, I've been fighting to get better representation, but we need to pay tribute to a woman that we want America to know about. So Hattie thinks, oh, okay, he's about to acknowledge me. And he says, he's on the stage and he says, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome as someone that everyone should know, Lena Horne. And Lena Horne comes on stage and he says, this is who we want America to see. She's light-skinned, she's skinny, and she's articulate. We don't want any more mammies. And he says that with her sitting right there. And so it was that type of thing that she saw all the time. And that's how, you always say, I was born in the right time, because she held her head up, and I think I'd be ready to turn over some stuff, act a plumb fool, but she sat there and had dignity the whole time, and she faced that kind of thing on a regular basis.
Yeah. I've only had a chance to read the first few chapters of your book, but I very much felt that for her. I felt so much for her. I was like, she's alone, because on the white side, she's certainly not welcome, but then on the black side, she's also getting all of the friction and all of the flack, and it's like she's by herself, fighting this battle, for black women, for black actors and actresses to be recognized, but she's alone in this fight. She has no one who understands her side of the story.
Right. There's so many black people wanted her to not take those roles. And her thing was, okay, I would love to play Wonder Woman. Where do I go audition? Where do I go sign up to be Rock Huston's love interest? I'm playing the roles that I'm able to play.
Exactly. Let's continue to talk about Hattie. Did you find writing her to be a complex character to write?
Oh, absolutely. Because Hattie would love to write. And so she would write letters to the editor, write letters to everybody that often got her in trouble. So anytime she got mad, she would go write a letter and she'd mail it off before anybody could stop her. And the letters would be printed, and so it would just create more problems for her. But it was because she was so frustrated. She's living in this world. She's trying to find her path, and she can't get support from anywhere. And so she was very complex. She was also complex with her love life. Hattie was married 4 times, once to a bigamist, another time to a man that basically took all of her money. And so she was always looking for love. So that would get kind of frustrating because she kept making one bad decision after another. And then there was a point where she had her fill with all these no good men. So she said, okay, well, I'm going to try a woman. And I didn't want to write that. I was like, I'm going to just leave that out. And Hattie came and said, look, if you're going to tell my story, tell it all. And my mother said I need to stop telling people that because I sound crazy. But Hattie talked to me on this journey. And it really was. It was a complex woman that I felt like I needed to tell her entire story.
Awesome. Okay, this question is for both of you. If Hattie McDaniel and Jessie Redmond Fawcett were to have a conversation about sexism, racism, and dealing with complicated romantic relationships in their lives, what do you think that conversation would sound like?
They would start singing that song, Sister. Seriously, they had, when you just said that, nobody's ever asked us that question, but they had exactly the same issues. Jessie was older than Hattie McDaniel a few years earlier, but the same sexism, the same racism, complicated relationship because Jesse, while Hattie loved being married Jessie didn't want to be married to nobody. She just wanted to have a career, and so the relationship with W.E.B. Du Bois worked out just wonderfully for her. And she certainly wouldn't want to be married to him because she knew he would cheat. So he wasn't the one she wanted. She didn't want him. And so it was a complicated relationship, but she had a goal. She was determined. And you know what's also very interesting, Jessie Redmond Fawcett, like Hattie, was a woman of first. They were both leaders in what they did. Jessie was the first young woman to graduate from the Philadelphia High School for Girls, which is a very prestigious school even now. The first black woman to graduate from Cornell University. The first black woman to graduate Phi Beta Kappa. The first, I know, right? She was just the first of so many things, and the first and only literary editor of the Crisis magazine. So she was just a leader in everything that she did, just like Hattie.
And Hattie had her first, I didn't know this when I started writing. I didn't know that Hattie was the first black person to ever have their music played on the radio. Oh. She had blues songs that she recorded. She's the first person to have them recorded. Of course, the first person with the Academy Award. And then the biggest thing for me was I had no idea that black and brown people can live wherever they want because of Hattie McDaniel. She fought for restrictive covenants. And that is basically saying that we can live wherever we want. Restrictive covenants were keeping black people out of neighborhoods. And they tried to get Hattie out of her mansion in Sugar Hill. And she said, oh, no. And so she took it to court and won, which was unheard of. And that became the catalyst to strike down the Supreme Court, which overruled restrictive covenants.
Oh, wow. So much history. In both novels, these two women overcome some insurmountable odds. Can you discuss how your books address the complexities of race, class, and identity?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things I didn't notice about Harlem Rhapsody until it was over was the classism and the elitism of the Harlem Renaissance. All of the writers of the Harlem Renaissance were part of Du Bois' Talented Tenth. And so it was interesting because I was writing about that segment of the Negro population. W.E.B. Du Bois at the time was the most educated black person on the globe. Like, there's never been another time when somebody could say that, but he had 2 undergraduate degrees, a master's, and he was the first black man to get a PhD from Harvard. And he surrounded himself with people just like that. And that's how we have the Harlem Renaissance. So I was able to see the classism there. He was a bit of an elitist, along with being a misogynist, but he was a man of his time. And one of the things I love writing about the 1920s is I love writing about that time period, all the political discourse, while you have black people for the first time looking in the mirror and seeing themselves with pride.
Yeah, so one of the things, Hattie definitely wouldn't have been considered the talented 10th because he felt like if you didn't go to college, you weren't talented, and Hattie would disagree with that. But one of the things that she definitely got the sexism, and she had this battle when she auditioned for Mammy, the role of Mammy. Every black actress in Hollywood wanted the role. Eleanor Roosevelt wanted her maid to have the role. And so there was, when they went on auditions, they would always have this issue where there's a long line of heavy-set, dark-skinned women all auditioning for the same maid role. And there was one point where the casting director got really tired, and Hattie was there, and they were trying to decide on who they were going to hire, and this was for a different movie. And he said, well, just pick one, because if you've seen one fat black actress, you've seen them all. And that was their mentality all the time. So she definitely got that sexism, the colorism, all of that.
Yes. As you culled and curated information for these historical works, I'm sure you relied on primary resources, artifacts, and documents that were retrieved from libraries, museums, possibly even private collections of higher learning institutions. Moving forward, how do you think your approach will change, if at all, with the current entity in place that supports the erasure and removal of cultural materials?
So that's going to be very interesting. I didn't think about that because I moved to Harlem for about a total of 5 weeks, and I did almost all of my research in the Schomburg Research Center, which is the library of the Harlem Renaissance. In the book, it's called the 135th Street Library, but that's where we have a lot of our information. And I haven't been able to imagine, even though I say Americans don't have an imagination, I guess I don't, because I haven't been able to imagine somebody going in there and trying to shut down the Schomburg. I haven't been able to, and that would be tough. I don't know what we would do if they took away that, because in the Schomburg, not only did I get to read every issue of the Crisis magazine from October 1919 to the summer of 1925, I got to find all of Du Bois' biographies there, which is where I found out about Jesse. I got to read their personal letters. So if any of you ever wondered if the affair really happened, I got receipts. I got letters where I was reading it like this, because I just couldn't believe that you not only wrote the letter, but you sent the letter, and then you left the letter for your historical record. Like, so other people, that's why I told my daughter, burn everything I had, everything. Because 100 years from now, you are not going to be sitting in the library talking about Victoria Christopher Berry and did this. So I don't know what would happen, because that's where we get the research, and I don't know what would happen if they took that away from us. I haven't considered that, and that scares me, because one of the things that I am determined to do is, for all these years, for 25 of the 28 years I've been writing, I have been writing women's fiction. So the last 5 years I've been writing historical fiction. And this is where I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay right here because of what's going on in the world today. So while they try to bury us, I'm going to excavate us. And I always say that while they want to ban a book, I'm going to write 2 books. And so now I'm going to have to figure out what to do about this history, because I'm going to be the first person there if they go after the Schomburg. So y'all just raise the bail money right now, because that's a good question. We would, if they're trying to erase our history, they probably would go after our history first.
Yeah, both of us are on banned book lists. I'm on a ban. My son was in class, and he sent me a message. This was about 3 months ago. Oh my God, Mom, we're looking at the banned book list and your book is on here. And he's like, what's in your book that it requires it to be banned? And I said, I would like to know that too. And she's also, her Stand Your Ground is banned in Florida. And so they're starting with those books. And my book was banned because one conservative individual decided he didn't like it. And he took it to the school board, and without discussion, it was banned. And so, to me, that's just the beginning. Wait till they really read the books. They read these books. And so it is just up to us to remain vocal and vigilant and not sit on the ledge of the apartment building and watch the world burn.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, because, see, here's the thing. Art has become our activism. Our writing is our way to resist. And your way to resist is to read. And to read, because the reason they want to ban the books is so you won't read them, because they can't take away the knowledge. They can burn a book, but they can't take away what you've read and what you've shared with other people. So we're all in this together. This is our art is our resistance, and we need your help.
All right. One last question before we wrap it up and allow the audience the opportunity to ask questions. What is it like? How long was it for you in writing Harlem Rhapsody? How much time, how many years of research and writing, and then finally you birthed this book?
Yeah, so it wasn't, I don't know what I did to this thing. I think I got it all wrapped around. It wasn't as long, because what is so interesting about research is that I start maybe for 3 solid months of just reading the letters, calling ReShonda and my other friends saying, can you believe this? Listen to this. and all of that stuff. Research never ends, though. Because once I read every book, every magazine, and everything, and I start writing, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. So, for example, the very first scene of Harlem Rhapsody, when she, rides up into Harlem, I had to figure, okay, so she took a cab? And what did the cabs look like? Were they still horse and buggy? So I have to stop and look at that. Then I had to get a floor plan of what a brownstone looked like. Then I was writing and I said, were they called bathrooms then? And they were not. So I research every word. It takes me, maybe I would write a chapter in 3 or 4 days now. Before, it takes me weeks to write one chapter. So it takes me well over a year of I write full time. I'm talking about writing 14 hours a day. Of just writing. So the research never stops. I do the foundational research for about 3 months, and then by the time you add everything in from thinking about it to writing it and editing it, it's a 2-year process.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so for me, the research took me 2 years, and I over-research. At one point, she was like, "Can you stop researching and write the book?" and that's that journalism part of me. I just continued digging. And I had to learn to try and balance it out. Even when I was finished writing, I'm still going back and doing more research. And so that was why this is a challenge to me. That's the biggest challenge for me in writing this, is finding that middle ground. And one of the things that drew me to Hattie McDaniel was Hattie was a quiet warrior. So we are so used to the Angela Davis, power to the people, Victoria Christopher Murray, burn the plantation down type people. But there is a fraction of people who are quiet warriors. And my grandmother was a quiet warrior. She believed having a seat at the table could bring just as much change. And so that was what drew me to Hattie McDaniel. Her thing is, I can become like Butterfly McQueen, who was another actress who played Prissy in Gone with the Wind. And Prissy was that Victoria Christopher Murray. Because Prissy, Scarlett O'Hara slapped Prissy in the movie, and Prissy slapped her back. And
Prissy, it was part of the movie, but she slapped her back anyway.
And she wasn't supposed to. But she was then banned. She was blackballed, and it affected her career. And so Hattie made changes in the way that she knew how by having a seat at the table. For example, they had the N-word in the Gone with the Wind script, and they insisted on keeping it in there. Well, every time it got ready for Hattie to say it, she just wouldn't say it. And the director would get mad and say, okay, we're wasting time, say the role. And she'd be like, okay. And then they'd come to it and she just wouldn't say it. And then finally he was like, okay, forget it. Fine, it works as it is. And she had gotten her point across without burning the plantation down. And so she did it the best way she knew how. And she integrated helped integrate the restrooms, but she knew no one would listen to her. She got Clark Gable to do it. And so I was attracted to her inner strength and her being that quiet warrior.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this formal part of the session now and give you all more opportunities to ask your questions. But as a journalist, I have to reveal my source. And when Gerald invited me to do this, I was excited. It was probably about a month ago, and I'm like, yes. And he was like, stop by and pick up the books. And I was like, yes. And then I was like, whoa, I am not going to have time to read 2 novels in a month. I was like, Gerald, help. I need help with intelligent questions. So he wrote these questions that you ladies were saying. I love that. So I'm going to give the credit where it is due. I did embellish on some of them a little bit. I took some literary liberties, but the questions were Gerald. So great job. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are now going to open it up to the audience for questions. When you stand, please tell us your name and let us know if you have already read either of the books, and then give us your question.
And this is our favorite part, so if you don't start asking questions, I'm going to call on you. Okay, so yes, young lady.
Speaking of Clark Gable, my name is Georgette Mayo, and I'm an archivist, and I also facilitate a reading circle, and we featured your book last May.
Oh, thank you.
So in regards to Clark Gable and the way that you wrote him, was that, the friendship and...
Yes. So Clark Gable, who was the king of Hollywood, their friendship was 100% real. He was an ally before we knew what an ally was. He was always fighting for her. In fact, when Atlanta held the premiere of Gone with the Wind and 1 million people came, they said Hattie couldn't come. So Clark said, well, then I'm not coming. And she's like, you're the star. You have to go. But they always had that type of relationship. Now, a lot of people would ask me, was Clark Gable black? Because that was a rumor going around. I researched it extensively. And because I could not find receipts, I did not put that in the book because I didn't want to become a banned book. And so had I said Clark Gable was black with no proof, I would have been more than banned. They would have just completely ruined me. But their friendship was very much real. And everything that happened in the book between the two of them actually happened, except he did not go to the Academy Awards. So the book opens with him at the Academy Awards. He did not go because he found out as he was getting dressed that he didn't win, so he took his tux off and went and watched TV.
My name is Willa, and I am a children's author beginning, and I'm just curious as to what advice would you give to novice authors?
So what advice would we give to you as a novice author, writing or promoting, or what is your question? Okay, because a lot of people talk about wanting to write a book and how to get started, and I always tell people to just do it. It sounds so simple, but I've wanted to write my entire life, and every year I would make an excuse not to do it. And finally, after like 16 years of being married with my husband saying, you know, you got to write this book, 16 years into our marriage, he's like, I thought you were going to be a writer. One day he said to me, if you don't do it soon, one day you're going to be 80 years old. And you're going to be sitting on somebody's porch wishing you had at least tried. And so that was the year that I said, okay, I'm going to just write one word a day. One word a day. I said I might be 80 when I finish, but I will have at least attempted it and tried it. I did it one day, one word a day. Some days I came home and I wrote, she said, but I doubled my commitment and felt wonderful. But it was that feeling of wonderful that kept me doing it the next day. I finished that book in 3 months. Because writing is not about writing, it's about the discipline of writing. It's about anything that you want to do. It's just the discipline of it. So I tell people to just do a little bit every day. Quantity nor quality matter because you can't write a book in your head. So get those words down on a page so that you have something to work with. So that's the advice I would have for someone because people look at those books and they say, oh, I'm trying to write that. I can't even write that book. That book was 4 and 5 drafts with a copy editor, a line editor. Then I still had 3 times to read it over again. And so it takes a lot. It takes a team effort to get there. Your job is to get something out so that a team can work on it with you.
And then I'm a marketing and outside the box thinker. So you have to think of ways to get out in front of people. Now, for me, when I started out, I wrote my first book and I was self-published. So I couldn't get a book deal, but I knew that I wanted people to read this book. So I would do things. I was in Oklahoma City at the time. I would call VaLinda's bookstore and say, hi, do you carry My Brother's Keeper by ReShonda Tate Billingsley? Because that's what my first book. She'd say, nope, I don't have it, never heard of. I'm just using her as an example. This wasn't her in particular. But then I'd call back about 3 hours later. Hi, do you carry this book called My Brother's Keeper? They go, no, we don't have it. Sorry. No joke. Right before closing, I would call, I'm looking for this book called My Brother's Keeper. And they'd say, we don't have it, but we need to get it because everybody's calling about this book. And I did that in store after store, day after day. And it ended up getting the attention of an agent who got me a book deal with Simon & Schuster. And here I am 54 books later.
Now bookstores all across the country will be flooded with authors calling, inquiring, do you have this book?
And I read The Personal Librarian and also First Lady.
First Lady.
Yes, I like that one. One thing about The Personal Librarian, I was surprised that you brought in the fact that in order to stop the lady, the librarian, to be revealed, she said, "I'll tell you." Tell the sister she was going to tell the daughter that she was in a gay relationship. I thought that was interesting. So was that true?
That was true. That was true. The personal librarian is the story of the woman who curated. J.P. Morgan has the most valuable art and rare book collection in the world. And it was curated by a black woman, but nobody knew she was black until she passed away. So when the daughter, we don't know if the daughter knew she was black, but Belle knew that the daughter was gay. And we know that they didn't have a good relationship. So that's when we say it's anchored in history. That's what we mean by that. We take some of it and then we put the fictional part together, connecting the dots.
What is the childhood? How did these things grow up? How did Hattie McGill grow up, and how did Jesse,
how did Jesse grow up? So Jesse Redmond, and who are their parents? Because that's a good question. You become who you're raised by. And Jesse has an interesting situation because she was the youngest of 7 children, but 5 of her siblings passed away before they were 20. But her mother passed away just months after she was born, so she never knew her mother. And then a few years later, her father married a white Jewish woman. And so her name was Isabella Huff, and she had 3 children. She was a widow with 3 children. He was a widower with 7 children. So I wondered why in the world, at the end of the 1800s, would a white woman marry a black man? Because
7 kids.
Because first of all, you already have a baseball team together, and then it's the rise of white supremacy and everything. And I couldn't figure it out. It took me weeks. I decided to look at the census, and I discovered, because I was looking for her parents, and so what I discovered from the census is that her first husband was a black man. That's just what she did. She married black men. But there was a reason. She was an integrationist. Have you ever heard that term before? I had never heard that term. They were abolitionists during slavery, and then they became integrationists, and they believed that the way for full equality was the total integration of the races. And so Isabella Huff, this white woman, was going to integrate America all by herself. Because she married a black man, had 3 mixed children. She married another black man, had 3 mixed children. If she had done it again, she was going to do it. But the thing that was so interesting was that's the woman that raised Jesse Redmond Fawcett. And so this was this white woman who used her privilege to get her daughter, because she treated her like her daughter, into schools. And her mother is a prominent character in Harlem Rhapsody.
What is the name that she called her in the book?
Maman, a French name, okay. Maman. So that maman is the French word for mother or mommy. Okay. And how I found that out was she didn't want to call her mother. She didn't want to call her mommy because even though she didn't know her mother, she wanted to pay homage to her mother. So she loved French. And so maman was what she called her mother.
And Hattie grew up extremely poor. Her family, her mother and father were slaves who ended up going to fight, and they both just had a very, very destitute, they grew up destitute. And the father spent all of his life trying to get his Social Security, but they kept saying, "We need your birth certificate." And he was like, "Master never gave it to me." So he really did. They grew up in poverty, but her mother just wanted her to be a domestic. And she would always fuss because her and her siblings were all entertainers. They were always singing. And her mother got to the point where she would give her a nickel just not to sing.
I love that part of your book. Were her friends, were those true characters?
Every single one of her friends were true characters. And what's so funny is they met because they would all audition for the same role.
Right.
Ruth Dandridge, who was Dorothy Dandridge's mother. There was Lillian Randolph from Imitation of Life. So all of these women were really good friends, and they kept her grounded.
Okay. I love that part of the book because, as you said, they always competed for the same parts, but they had each other's back.
Right.
And I really appreciated that about the book and felt, Hattie did have that support system because she was definitely against the world.
Yeah.
I love when I read your book because it takes me about 5 months to read your book. And I'm going back to check. And I've got everybody knowing what a Boston marriage is.
You didn't know what a Boston marriage was, right?
And now I'm like, my question for you is, I am not a writer. I don't want to be a writer. I'm a reader. Mm-hmm. And in my next life, I got 6 years before I retire, I want to edit and proofread and read your books before they get out. I want to tell you on page 36, how do I tap into that?
So, it's very interesting. My publisher, Random House, has a new program that they're doing called Black Influencers. And they're trying to find Black readers who will read the books early, not as early as you want them, but before everyone else, and then helping to spread the word on that. And so if you just even Google the Random House Black Influencer Project, you could do that. It's really interesting because we're with one of the big 5 publishers, they don't really like our books going out until they have been totally edited. Because they don't want a bad copy to be out there and somebody send it out. And so I'm told not to get beta readers. And that's what you're talking about, is being a beta reader. No, so by the time you get and she said, is that the same thing as the ARC, which is called an ARC, an advanced reader's copy. By the time you get that, that's been edited enough for you to go out. Beta readers read it even before that. But you would be given an advanced reader copy in the Black Influencer program. And one of the things they're trying to do is use more Black readers to help sell more Black books. We need you. We need you. So definitely look into that.
And one of the things, when it comes to needing you, one of the things people don't realize that how much their support matters. I had someone come up to me and say, "You're my favorite author. I bought your last book and I passed it to 32 of my friends." And I was looking at her like I made $1. So we need you to pass the word, not the book.
Hi, my name is Brenda. My question is, what impact do you think AI is going to have on the creative writing abilities of our young people?
Yeah, I think it's not only just, it is AI, because young people don't even know how to finish a word, because when they're texting, it finishes it for them. On the ability to write these kinds of books or anything, I don't think AI can touch us right now. AI doesn't have a soul. And so if you were to tell AI what to do, it will do it, but it has no soul. What scares me is that in 50 years, AI is going to have a soul. And that's going to be a scary thing. But I won't be here. So right now, I'm going to be 70 in September, so I'm not going to be here. But, yep. So I don't think it's going to affect us now. I think there will be people who will try to use it. And when you compare it to books by authors, you're going to know it's missing a soul. But I think it's bad for our young people who can't even write in cursive or read cursive. When I go to UPS and hand them a thing, they can't read my writing. It's sad. It's very sad.
But I don't think that we can just say we need to tell them not to use AI. I think we have to educate them on AI and have them verified. There is an article in the Chicago Sun-Times today, and it lists the 36 best books of the last year. I think it was 21 of them don't exist. And the author said he put it in ChatGPT and had ChatGPT create this list.
That's what he get.
And it was 21 of them that don't exist. But what's going to happen is people will read that and they'll say, okay, here are all these best books of the year. And that's where the problem is going to come in.
And then somebody's going to put it in a term paper and get an F.
Exactly.
So we one more, because she came.
Yeah, and that's not a spoiler because she had no children. And she did. So one of the things we do when we're writing, we don't change a character to that point. So yes, Hattie thought she was pregnant the whole time. She got ready. She put the whole nursery together. She was ready to have this baby. But by month 10, she like, okay, where the baby? And it turns out that she wasn't pregnant. And so that was one of the things that really devastated her. Yeah. And
so I just like the way you asked that question. Did she really think she was pregnant? Yeah. Did she really think at her old age, with her old eggs? I mean, she stood up and said it with your whole chest. She just insulted every old woman in this room, including me.
One of the things, though, I do get readers a lot, and they think Hattie has been through a lot. And people will come up to me and say, I need a sequel. And I'm like, she died.
Oh, my God. Oh,
so thank you guys so much for coming out. Really, thank you.
Wait, I have to tell them about my next book.
Okay.
Yes, because I have a book coming out January 27th called With Love, pre-order. With Love from Harlem, about the life of Hazel Scott, based on the life of Hazel Scott. And for those that don't know, she was one of the biggest jazz singers of our time, bigger than Billie Holiday, who was in the book, Sarah Vaughan, and she was Adam Clayton Powell's ex-wife. Before she was his wife, though, she was his mistress. And when she became his wife, that means the mistress spot was open, so... But that comes out January 27th. It's called With Love from Harlem.
And my next book is coming out next summer with Marie. It'll be our third collaboration together. We don't have a title. Can you believe it? It's already done. But we don't tell people as much as ReShonda tells about her book. This book is about a black woman and a white woman and the mob. That's it.
All right, everyone. Please give our authors a round of applause. What a delightful evening.
I want